are infinite.
These are the stories that made us laugh, cry, and look at life in a whole new way.
Can we run?
Welcome to the teen fiction community, and today we're counting down our top 10 coming-of-age cliches.
I can feel my heart beating in my chest.
For this list, we've taken a look at several famous novels to find the common conventions, tropes, and themes that continually show up in stories about growing up.
You wrote me a song.
Before we begin, we'll obviously be looking at plot details, so be warned that there is a spoiler alert. Number 10. Getting support. Like many of the entries on this list, the coming-of-age genre isn't always filled with happy scenarios.
I like that version as much as the next girl does. It's just not the truth.
Oftentimes, the main character has little to no support system throughout the book, meaning that the story ends with them finally choosing to get the help they've been needing all along.
My doctor said we can't choose where we come from, but we can choose where we go from there.
Of course, they won't have chosen to do this out of the blue. Typically, the trigger for this change comes from other factors, such as love and friendship, which brings us to our next cliche. Number 9. It all starts with love.
I'm so crazy in love with you.
People don't just change out of the blue, and so what better way for this to happen than for a guy, or sometimes girl, to sweep you off of your feet.
I love you, Charlie.
I love you too.
Prior to the events of the novel, our lead character will have often resigned themselves to a life they don't particularly enjoy.
Worst of all, support groups.
Christ is our friend and he'll be there till the end.
That is, until a romantic interest comes in, takes notice and sets about change. The results are loved by fans, and the rest, well, we'll leave you to read.
No. I'm gonna get the girl.
Number 8. Exploration of sexuality.
We are a hot mess.
You're so beautiful.
A big part of growing up is also working out all the parts of yourself, which typically is why sexuality tends to be touched upon in these stories.
Stop.
You don't.
Come on, please. It's important.
LGBT characters coming out, loving relationships between two romantic leads, and learning to become comfortable with your own body are often staples of a coming-of-age story, and it's certainly not one we expect to go away anytime soon.
I'm sorry.
Number 7. Ambiguous ending. Many of us enjoy happily ever afters, to the point where we've even come to expect them in some cases.
Oh, and Wesley? He passed science. He's going to Ohio State in the fall. And since I got into Northwestern, we can visit each other. A lot.
However, that is not necessarily the case here. Even in the cases where coming-of-age stories end on a somewhat happy note, there is usually some sort of uncertainty.
Charlie!
After all, these characters are still growing up.
Come on. Let's go be psychos together.
Because of this, the writers usually give us a 50-50 scenario where we're never entirely sure if our lead will get the ending that we hope for. On the plus side, you can choose the ending you'd rather see for yourself.
Mia.
Number 6. Character archetypes.
I give you Wesley Rush.
Stereotypes are a major cliche in teen fiction, both book and film, so it makes sense that they would crop up in stories where the theme is about teens growing up.
Better than the normal Mia. You know, with the hair and the makeup and the clothing.
What's good about this trope, however, is that writers in these scenarios tend to break down those cliches, revealing that underneath those labels, our characters are still real people dealing with real issues.
So, what's your story?
I was diagnosed when I was 13.
No, not your cancer story. Your real story. Your hobbies, your passions, your weird fetishes.
In this case, this cliche works. Number 5. Life lessons. You don't mature without at least learning a few things. And often, these stories are more educational than you would think.
In the end, it's not about popularity, or even getting the guy. It's about understanding that no matter what label is thrown your way, only you can define yourself. Take it from a Duff.
At the start of the story, the main character still has a lot to learn. By the end though, you might find yourself crying and vowing to be a better person.
It's a paper town. Paper houses and paper people. Everything's uglier up close.
Why? Because over the course of the story, the main has learnt a very tough life lesson. Whether they take this lesson to heart or not is another thing entirely, but as readers, we also learn something right along with them.
We accept the love we think we deserve.
Number 4. Trauma. Yet another sad entry on our list, but it's far more common than you would expect. Prior to the events of the novel, the leads, or other main characters, have usually been through a traumatic event.
It might be too hard for you to keep fighting, but I want you to live.
Regardless of how long ago it happened, this tends to be the defining reason why our characters behave as they do, as readers are made to unravel the mystery of their past.
It happened. There's no avoiding it. No forgetting.
You may still want to bring tissues though. Number 3. Coping with death.
Isn't it amazing how life is one thing and then in an instant it becomes something else? Like here I am, Mia, the girl who thinks about the cello and Adam and Juilliard. And just like that.
Yet another dark entry on this list. Death is an extremely common theme in coming-of-age stories.
Gus, I'm a grenade. One day I'm gonna blow up, and I'm gonna obliterate everything in my wake, and I don't want to hurt you.
In many cases, the lead is dealing with the demise of someone prior to the story, or in other cases, the threat of their own demise. It's this that comes to define the character, their actions, and many events of the story, and they become stronger all the more for it.
I never lit one. It's a metaphor, see? You put the thing that does the killing right between your teeth, but you never give it the power to kill you. A metaphor.
Number 2. Outcast or damaged leads.
If my English teacher's the only friend I make today, that would be sort of depressing.
Change is a major factor in a coming-of-age story, and the one we seem to love the most? Taking a loner or outsider character and making them well-liked and popular.
Fascinating. People like me matter here. People like you will never matter.
Usually, our starring character tends to be on the outside looking in, and regardless of whether it's the overlooked friend, the loner, or the misfit, events caused by other cliches on our list will slowly break them out of their shell.
Hey, make some friends!
We might not always like the lead at the start of the story, but don't worry, you can guarantee that by the end, readers will be rooting for them.
You're a wallflower.
I didn't think anyone noticed me.
Before we get to the number 1 entry on our list, here are a few honorable mentions. Number 1. Perception.
Wes had made me see the school differently, and I wasn't happy about it. It didn't matter what group you were in, it was unavoidable. Even if you weren't in a group, like creepy Carrie Raskowitz.
I'm my own best friend.
The way that we observe people has a massive impact on the way that we treat them, and no other genre highlights that more than this one.
I am quite unextraordinary.
I reject that at the hand.
Be it social cliques, judgmental characters, or even the media, these stories often highlight to the reader the dangers of judging a person without even knowing the knowledge of both sides of the story, putting you in the shoes of someone completely unexpected, and reminding us that the way we treat someone might seem small to us, but can have massive repercussions on someone else.
Do you think if people knew how crazy you really were, no one would ever talk to you?
It's a trope that we love, and one that continues to make us as readers just a little bit more empathetic of other people. Even if it's just for a short time, we can guarantee that you'll end these stories with a slightly different outlook on life, and that is why it's our number 1 entry.
It's not as weird as it looks.
Still weird.
Do you agree with our list?
Revenge plot begins.
What are your top 10 cliches in a coming-of-age story?
Don't go closing any doors on yourself.
Feel free to comment below, and thank you all for watching.
And don't you dare be creeping on my Pinterest, whores!